This is the One and All Podcast, a proud member of the Dunham Audio Network.
We will always be the same. Our beliefs will be unchanging and unwavering. We believe continually in one truth, but for all humanity. In one Savior, but for all people. One truth that will be delivered in love and compassion, connecting every one person to all that God has promised them.
Welcome to the One and All Podcast. My name is Aaron Magnuson, and I am joined by my trusty co-host,
Benjamin Lounsbury.
And today on the podcast, we get to sit down with none other than the man himself, Christopher Fink, as he talks about One and All Worship's brand new song release.
Yes, it's called Christ with the Victory. It's coming out in a few weeks. But it's amazing to hear the heart behind it, what goes into the making of the song, why it's important. And that it's, we hope and pray it's not just another song to you, but it's actually weighted in truth and scripture and hearing the heart behind it. We hope it brings you closer to God and closer into community with each other.
Let's listen in.
But speaking of songs
and new music,
Christopher Fink.
Yo.
Hey, do you like to, we may have talked about this last time, but it's Christopher?
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if we talked about this on the podcast the last time, but we have talked about it as friends. I have years, people have called me, because of sports or whatever, people have said Fink or
dummy.
I've heard it all,
right.
Dum-dum, things like that, which felt very natural for me. But no, I've always gone by Chris, and one day my mom came up to me maybe 5 years ago, and she's like, hey, I've always been curious on why you don't go by your full name. And I was like, well, I don't know. I've just always gone by Chris because that's what people call me. And she said, well, you should consider going by Christopher because I named you that, and it's powerful.
Wow.
And then so I went, oh, well, I've never considered that. And so for a time I was like, okay, I'll go by that, But now it's really for me, it's whatever my friends would like to address me as.
Do you know what the difference in meaning is between?
No.
Or is there?
I'm sure
Chris
that
and
there
Christopher?
is. Yeah. My mom always had those things that she would tell me that it meant, but
Right. I feel like that's a mom thing because my dad he got a nickname early on, Mag, the front end of Magnuson, and people he's introduced to people now as Mag.
yeah.
But his mom is the only one who calls him Brian, his actual name.
Yeah.
But same thing, point of contention for his mom, where it's no, I named you this.
Yeah.
I looked it up. It says the meaning of the name Christopher is meaning carrier of Christ.
Oh,
Wow.
thank you, Mom.
Watch, Chris is going to just be something terrible.
Chris without tougher. I think that the topher part of Christopher is carrier of.
Oh.
If you just Chris, you're blasphemous. You're saying you're Christ. Dude.
Well, yeah, I don't want that comparison.
Well, Chris, but without the T.
Saint Christopher.
Oh,
no,
that makes
it
me
means the same
uncomfortable.
thing. The name Chris
Maybe
is a
that's-
boy's name of English origin, meaning one who carries Christ.
Oh. So they both carry Christ.
Chris or Christopher.
So
Awesome.
I think you're good either way. Now you have ammo for your mom.
That's very cool.
Mom, I'm still
I'm
carrying
sure
Christ.
she knew that the entire time.
Yeah. Does that align with what she told you as a kid? Or do you not remember what she said your name meant?
My mom had many things that she kind of made famous for me.
Nice.
One of them being, we only really need three things. We need beans, we need rice, and we need Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying? So she made sure that my food groups were taken care of.
Yes.
You know what I mean? The things that were really going to get me through life. But no, my mom was very good at just speaking life to me all the time. She came from a really hard circumstance, and she survived a lot of great things, and she kind of led the way, less with words, more with what she was doing. So I appreciate her for that. But when I was younger, she would make an emphasis, just to tell me that God was going to do something big, and that was why I couldn't live the way other people lived, and that was why You know, God's grace sometimes doesn't mean that you're just abundantly blessed, but or what seems to be abundantly blessed with talents and different things. But I think sometimes His blessing also looks like the correction that you've stood, and like the painful things that you've been through, and Him using it to bring wisdom and healing. And so I've always felt really fortunate about that. She's always reminded me and just said, "Hey, He set you aside for a purpose, and so that's why." You're going to go through some of the things that you're going through, and but you always have to carry Him with you, you know. So that was kind of her message that she had for me all the time, and that encouraged me. But it always made me feel like, I guess, I don't know, that my name should be something that represents something good.
That's awesome
with whatever I'm doing. So
this is so perfect. Because this is going to segue really nice right back in. Naming a child is one thing. Naming a song is a completely different thing. And so One and All, do you consider it released where it's at right now? You've performed it once on the weekend, or kind of introduced it to our church once on the weekend. Does that mean it's released, or when it like is available for public consumption, that's when it's released?
That's a great question. I think that anytime, as far as the structure of how we do things as a team, this is our first release as a One and All Worship. And the thing that I feel is really important to our team is whenever we make a song or a video or any content that we feel needs to be shared with people, we really, really want to give it a chance to exist and live within the church. Because these things that we would be putting out, these songs or these videos, or whatever else, would be a fruit of what's happening inside the house. And so it's a very natural thing for us to somewhat soft release it into our church and allow for it to be a part of our church. And, you know, so this past week we introduced it, and we'll be doing it for the next couple of weeks leading up to Easter. So I would say that it's within our church right now, and it's a blessing to our church. And then we will, you know, officially release it to everyone at a future date, you know.
Nice. So partial release. So this song, I will say, it's been released to our church. So it's a brand new song. It's called Christ with the Victory. Do you just want to, for somebody like Ben is going to be much more familiar with this process, but for somebody like me and probably a lot of our listeners, just take us through what that is, maybe the heart behind why do we even make our own music versus taking something that already exists or even something that's existed for a long period of time, maybe like a hymn or something. Why create new music? And then a little bit about what the process is to get into that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's cool having the conversation with Ben and yourself. Like, I feel that Ben, everybody has their own style of writing or their own approaches to writing. I feel like Ben and I have spent enough time together and written enough times together where we know each other and we know how to approach the song, you know. But to kind of go to the original meaning and I guess the reason why is because we were built and made to bring a new song to God, to praise Him. Mm-hmm. And as we pray together as a church and as we walk through these messages that Pastor takes us through and these narratives and these circumstances that we battle just day in and day out, God is very clear how He uses music to be the portion, to be the side where praise is released. And we take that really seriously. And we are very fortunate to be a church that is very creator-driven and always kind of pushing the envelope on what we can do. But the whole purpose and the whole reason is to be a resource to the church. You know, if we're going to sing something that's an original thing that came from within one of our worship times or was written about maybe the circumstance that we're going through or the messages we'll be going through, when we're doing that from a place of giving and arming people with a song to sing in the middle of their circumstance. So it's kind of there's so many different layers and I think parts to it where you want to make it available to the world and to the capital C church, because maybe the Spirit might use it to help them in their time. But I see it as that. I see it as like medicine, man. I really do. I see it as a thing that, as the worship team of this church and as the creators of the content of this church, we are giving people those anthems to sing while they're in the middle of their circumstances, you know? And so because of that, we have a responsibility to make sure that it's available, that people can get to it easily, that it's at a place of constant meaning. You know, we never wanted to be a place of or come from a place of writing just to write.
Yes.
And I think that's a whole nother issue, though. I think as songwriters, we're going to write just to write because that's just what we have to do, you know? But when it comes to the songs that we're singing in church, those really have to be rooted deeply in what the Spirit is leading us through as a church. You know, I firmly believe that.
Yeah.
And sometimes he'll take a song and it'll be so intimate and for maybe and make more contextual sense within one house. But then there's other times where the Spirit, writes a song and it's used all around the world. You know, so being a resource to people and making sure the church feels like they're a part of what's going on, I think that's a big thing for us.
I also think it's going into a song, you prepare it much like, as far as the church context, you prepare it much like I would at least hope so, much like a sermon, you know, right? Because sermons are written, they're studied things. They're things that and you're preparing also for a particular event or a particular theme or a particular thing you want to communicate to the people that participate in the church setting. So Jeff, for instance, right, say we have, speaking specifically Easter, because that's a lot of what the song has to do with, Jeff is thinking about Easter in weeks in advance. He's in study and in prayer and in devotion. God, what do we need to be talking about? What do we need to address here? Obviously, Easter has a very specific theme, year in and year out. But there's new angles to look at it. And there's also people that every year have never heard it, heard the message. And so in preparing for a sermon, Jeff thinks about weeks in advance, okay, we're going to be talking about these things. What are we talking about in this particular occasion? Really specifically about the cross and how we have victory in the cross because of this event of Easter. And so as Jeff prepares a message and a sermon and a thought, whether he delivers it or not, in the same way, I think Chris had the original idea of, okay, we need to, much the same, how can we prepare a thought for the church? And this goes beyond just, do we record it and release a song? It becomes like, yeah, you could do that. Like Chris said, you write every day as songwriters, right? You're writing, or creators, you're writing or you're painting something, or maybe it's
right.
maybe
exercising
it's
that muscle.
Yeah, every day. And so whether or not you capture that, I think I'm really passionate about the capturing side because it's if we didn't have Scripture, right, the writers of Scripture and the people that will report the tellings and the movings of God and Jesus in his day, we couldn't benefit from that today and observe, wow, these happenings, these movements of the Spirit of God that were so powerful. And so I'm really passionate about capturing. And so I feel like it's a whole, writing's one side of it, and then catching it is a whole nother side. You have the creation of the fish of the ocean, and then you also have the capturing and the observance and the viewing of the beauty that is under the sea as well, that tells of God, that says, wow, these are fingerprints of God. And so in much the same way, I think we need to be responsible in also capturing those things. And then it goes where it may, from that point. But I think Chris had the idea of what do we need to be saying in the season as a church that goes hand in hand with what we're receiving on the message end from the sermon of Easter and all that. So I don't know if you wanted to talk to kind of where it originated, Chris, but Christ with the victory.
So I, in trying to, I think we've shared with the podcast before just kind of how we're in a brand new season with a new structure and a new kind of organization to how we do things. So in praying about what direction to take Christmas and Easter and some of these bigger events, I just felt like it was really important for us to have something that was original and could be a moment within that service that started in our room, in our house. And so what that looked like for me was just, hey, let's approach Christmas and Easter with a goal to have a song based around what we'll be sharing and what we'll be talking about. And like much what I was talking about earlier, just music being like medicine, or like what Ben was talking about, how much like a senior pastor or somebody would put together a sermon. Well, this is kind of the equivalent of that, and being able to prepare yourself for your church to sing a song together. And so what I did was I actually looked at the notes that Pastor gave us about, what he was going to be sharing at Easter. And fortunately for us, he goes away every single year and he plans out his messages, and we'll know a little bit about where he's headed. And so I was looking over his notes and looking through the Easter plan. And I was thinking about the series that came right before Easter, and that's the series we're in right now called The Cross Before Me. And essentially what Pastor has been sharing this entire series and will be sharing and kind of capping off at Easter is how the cross, we've forgotten how to put the cross first in our life for most of us. We've, what Pastor's kind of helping us understand is the cross was supposed to be our first perspective. It was the thing that was supposed to stand between us and our problems, between us and our issues. It was the thing that we should see first before we see our problems and our issues. And when it does that, or when we're able to do that as a people and as just believers in Jesus, it reminds us. It reminds us of the victory that Jesus won on the cross. It reminds us of no matter what my circumstances are and no matter what my issues or no matter what's going on in my life, I will always be able to lead from a place of joy that the Father gave his life for me. He knew that I would go through this. He knew that I was going to be, in a hard financial spot right now. He knew I was going to be in a hard emotional spot right now. He knew I'd be, I'd have issues in my family, or he knew whatever that battle is that we're going through, that we'll constantly go through in this life. He gave us the cross for that. And so, looking at those notes, I just went, man, wouldn't it be amazing to have an anthem that we sing at Easter that would remind us to put the cross before our issues and before our stuff, And so, the way everybody songwrites differently, but the way I kind of start is, for me, it's all about the melody. And I have melodies in my head, I feel like, all day long. And I love whenever I get to just hear a sample track by Ben or Raul where there's no vocals on it. Some people have to start from scratch with like a piano and a guitar. And like sometimes it happens that way, you can't really predict
Don't want to box it in, yeah.
Right, sure. But I find that I work really well when things are kind of already in the works.
In motion, yeah.
Yeah, so like if I get a beat from Ben's Beats, if I get it from a beat from Ben, some fire track he's working on, or from Raul, I'll listen to it, and then I'll just start putting these things down and shaping what the emotion is behind the song, what else, what are we trying to say in the song, and the kind of the dynamics of the verses and the chorus and how they sit and fall. Those are kind of my favorite starting points. But with Christ with the Victory, I sat down and I always think about these three things whenever I'm putting lyrics down, because I feel like we have a responsibility as ministers, just like speaking pastors who have to develop a message that is not contradictory to the word and is not so focused on emotion, but also focused on the root. It can be emotional, and in my preference, it will be. But the emotion has to be rooted from a place of joy, a place where the Father gets the glory. And
that's amazing. What I'm learning up to this point in the conversation is I really like that Ben brought in the element of this is no different than a pastor preparing a message. That is a creative element that is crafted by man, led by the Spirit, for the people, for a season, for a time, for a moment, for a series. And you have likened songwriting, something that we would culturally just see more as vain celebrity status, trying to get it to go viral, whatever it is. But you're describing it as no different because of the place that it originates from, which is a man led by the Spirit, or woman, right? Man or woman led by the Spirit, for a time, for a place, for equipping of the saints. And then you took it a step further just now, which I think is really cool, because we see in the Bible that people who are leading other people, pastors is what we call them here, are held to a higher standard. Right. And we are judged at a higher standard because there's people who are following our direction. And so it's just really cool for me to hear that my buddy Chris, when he writes, is thinking about all of these things. I am held to a higher standard. This has to come from the right place, or else that's just not a healthy place to write a song from. Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely, yeah. The three things that go through my mind, and I think a lot of my friends, the same, maybe we would say it differently, but there's kind of three navigation points for me. When I start to put down lyrics and I start to run it over in my head and sing it, I think about a coffee that I had with, I'm not sure I'm not sure if he's still doing the music thing right now or what. I don't know him personally. I was fortunate enough to hang with him for a bit, but I walked away from our coffee conversation. It was Zach Bolin. At that time, he was leading a band called Citizens, and I was able to have coffee with him once, and we were talking about songwriting, and he gave me something that was so great, kind of as a filter, and it was that the first thing that I think about is I ask myself three questions. Is it clear? That's the first thing. I have to look at these lyrics and be able to go, okay, it's clear about where we're at, what's being said, what's going on. Okay, is it clear? And then I ask myself, is it compelling? It's one thing to be clear. It's another thing to do things from a place of art. And is it something that will be a good representation of not myself, but of Jesus? Am I being lazy by doing this way? Am I being lazy by doing this when, and a lot of times I will catch myself being super lazy because it's like, as a vocalist, it should sound like this, and maybe you're just not the guy for it, or whatever. But you should write to a place where it's absolutely compelling. And then the third one, which I think is the one that I pray about and really, really think about the most, which is it true? So that for me is the end all be all. I have to look at these lyrics and I have to study them, and I have to look at their originations and their roots and the context of how I'm using it, because I need for it to be true to the Word of God. I need for it to be True. And the reason why is because the other aspect that we also, as songwriters and as ministers, is to understand the songs that we've been given the responsibility over and the freedom to release out into our congregations. We're giving them a song to sing in the middle of their battle. And the thing that keeps me up is like, if I give them like I feel like I'm giving them an empty weapon. Like it's a facade of a weapon
Plastic
that they feel like they're
sword into a
using.
battle.
Yeah. It's like, you could say this and it might make you feel better, but it's not rooted in God. And it's actually just my opinion because I'm artsy like that. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not putting down anybody who would go more artsy. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like,
is it grounded in truth?
Is it grounded in the word? Because that's why I specifically write church music for, like songs that people can sing praise music for. The reason why is to give people something
language
to arm themselves with when the enemy comes at them. And if I give them, like you said, like this plastic sword, that falls on me. I take that as my responsibility. And so is it clear? Is it compelling? Is it true? Those are some filters for me that really are huge. So with Christ with the Victory, after looking over the notes, after looking through everything, I said, okay, I need for us to have a song that's going to help us understand that our circumstances may not be where we want them to be. But the truth of the matter is the battle and that we face, the victory was already won for us on the cross. And so when we go in and we say Christ with the victory, we're not saying that any of what we need to get us through comes from us. We're saying, no, Christ with the victory. So when the enemy comes at you with the feelings of insecurities or the feeling of when he comes at you with his lies, you're able to sing something back at him that says, no, Christ with the victory on Calvary's Hill. The cross before me, my hope revealed. You paid my ransom. I've been set free. You know what I mean? The so cross good. Before me, I am redeemed. So us being able to say these words to our circumstances, it almost feels like a prayer of saying, no, enemy. Like, no, problems. The cross is in front of me and you. And in order for you to get to me, you got to get through him, And so, one of the other things too was being able to take a really great look at the verses, and thinking through when we're writing verses, a lot of times depending on the song, the verses are the things that are kind of the setup. You know what I mean? There's kind of like this flow to this verse where we're like, still in the hello of the song or the hello of the prayer, you're in the lobby, you know what I'm saying? And it can be a lot of fun in the lobby, I think as a songwriter for me, maybe I go too deep, too fast sometimes. And that Ben knows that about me. And, I want to make everything dramatical, but only because I'm chasing meaning, only because I'm chasing after that moment. And, but anyway, so there's a part in there though that I feel like is going to set a lot of people free. And I'm really excited about it. As we wrote it, I prayed through it and thought about how, if we're not careful and we're not walking with Jesus daily, if this, is not a part of our everyday life, then unfortunately we start to blur our lens. Unfortunately, without even knowing, like I wish there was an alarm that went off on my phone or on my watch that told me, hey, you're getting low. You need to connect with him. Your glasses are foggy and you don't realize it. Because your every day, the more time we spend away from Christ and in his presence, the more our eyes become distorted. So this verse of lead me to your presence, where peace and mercy overflow. The next line, when sight and feeling fail me. Fix my eyes on all you've done. So that for me was a big prayer for myself personally as well. Just going, Lord, I know if I spend too much time away from you, I'm going to see things differently. And I don't want to see things differently. I want to see them in the place that you are. And so now with everything that we're going through right now as a country, where people are on lockdown and there's quarantines, and like a couple of weeks ago, I just started praying and going, oh my gosh, Lord, I think you're going to use this song, because right now everything for everybody is so up in the air.
Right.
People's circumstances and lives are being thrown on their head and completely changed around. And to be able to say something like, Lord, lead me to your presence where peace and mercy overflow, because I can't seem to find that anywhere. Oh, and when my sight and feeling fail me, fix my eyes on all you've done. Take me back to the cross. When I'm worried about a family member of mine, me being a carrier of this virus or something and giving it to a family member, that's really scary, man. It really is. And there's so many things about this that kind of freaks people out, and for good reason. You can't knock anybody for being afraid. But I just have been praying that the Lord would use this in a time when our country and our world starts to rebuild and starts to get into a place of trying to find a new normal or whatever that's going to look like. I hope that he would use this as an anthem for people to say that, yeah, you know what? My life was completely changed and things have been crazy, and maybe, because it's not just believers right now.
Yes.
That are going through this. We can't forget that people who right now don't have a relationship with Jesus, now more than ever, they're starting to ask questions. And to be able to have a resource that points them to the true purpose of how we could rebuild, of how we could see clearly again, that meant a lot to me. And so going into to talk about the bridge for a second.
Yep.
I like to find, for me personally, when I'm writing a song, I like to find a moment where I try to imagine the whole song really like I'm leading it, like I'm on stage and I'm in front of people. And I try to balance the feeling of what would it be beneficial for everyone to say, and then what will I say right now? What would the Lord have us say in this moment in order for it to be everybody else's moment too? You know what I mean? Like it could be written from a perspective of it feels like it's coming from me, but as you sing it, it's going to come from you. I don't know if I'm being clear about that.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Well, it's very pragmatically. It's about what needs to be true first and foremost. That's the thing that everything rests on. Is it true? And then from that place, it comes down to art and communication. And it comes down to how you prepare a message, right? We see in Scripture, okay, these are the truths of Scripture, but how do I break it down? And how do you understand that now as someone who's receiving this? So it's a balance.
Yeah, totally. And so that bridge was me trying to balance that a little bit, but saying something that was more of like a personal prayer. Because there's so many times I think in my faith where, and I know a lot of friends who deal with the same thing, where maybe you didn't come from a traditional family structure. Maybe you grew up in a home where your dad wasn't really around, or your mom was, you had a single parent or whatever. And it's hard sometimes later on in life to see or feel worth it. You look at your relationship with God and you go, how could you, if the people here on earth don't even want to deal with me, how could you? And that's kind of like your view on things. And so there's these moments where I feel personally like God comes to me, or I go to God with these concerns that I've been having, and on feeling like, Lord, how could you use me when all I've ever given you is suffering? Lord, how can you use me if you know me? You know me better than anybody. You've seen me in my deepest places. You've seen me in my hardest seasons, and there's nowhere I can hide from you. And trying to deal with that, but then still give it praise and make it about him being the firm ground, like saying, hey, I don't understand this, Lord, but I know you do. And I know that your word tells me that your ways are higher than my ways and your thoughts are higher than my thoughts. And so anything I don't understand, I trust you with, you know, and I'll chase down whatever I need to chase down, and I'll do whatever you ask me to do. And I'm going to be honest with you the entire time. So anyway, in writing this bridge, we started it with the line, pure and blameless King, the crown of thorns was meant for me. And that was the place in the song where I needed to say that. It's like a prayer. Sometimes we just need to admit it. We just need to say it out loud. Pure and blameless King. Hey, Lord, the crown of thorns. I know it was meant for me. Okay. Knowing who I'd be, you took that place of suffering. You took the place of suffering for me. You took up the cross when you didn't deserve it. And when you took the cross up, you took all of my shame, all of my decisions, all of the things that I've done in the dark, all of the things that I've hidden from people. You took all of my guilt with you on that cross. And to be able to say, knowing who I'd be, and knowing that even before I was born, he knew everything that I would go through and every choice I would make, and yet he still decided to take up the cross. He knew that he had to deal with this. Thinking about his moment in the garden and thinking about how he was praying to his Father, and when he said, Lord, if there's any other way, take this cup from me. I break down if I think about that too long, because I go, here is my Lord, the perfect, the Holy One, the one I think about all day long, or the one I've been giving my life to, and this one I've been studying for, my lifetime. And you had a moment where you were scared, but you did it like a loving Father would. And so to be able to say that you took the place of suffering, you did it for me, was huge. And it's just really important to cap that, come out of that and saying,
you set the captive free.
You set this captive free. Grace now holds the claim on me. So as an anthem, we're singing this thing back to our circumstances. Hold on.
So good.
Enemy, you can't have this. I've never belonged to you. You tried to talk to me like I belong to you, but I don't. So you got to take it up with the cross. You have to bring all your stuff to God first before you come at me. You know what I mean? And so I felt like that's why, that's where it came from.
What gets me really riled up is, Jeff asked this. He asked me last week, what gets you going? And he's like, don't give me like the Christian or the overstudied response kind of a thing. What gets you going? Because we were talking about how no high's too high, no low's too low. I try and keep it pretty level. It's helpful for me to do that. Not saying anybody else has to, but it just keeps me sober-minded and kind of grounded on what really matters. But what gets me going, and my response was, if I just have to tell you very plainly, it's basketball and music.
Yes.
That's what gets me going. And it doesn't have to be with anybody. It can be by myself. I don't need anybody. Like I could just go shoot hoops. I could just go and I could just sit in a bed of music and just all day make it. And I get filled up by that. But if I were to dig a little deeper at it, it's the response of worship, music, worship with music. I think it's where we go as believers. It's where we go to battle. Yeah. It's where we go to war, right? We get equipped from messages and speaking in the truth of the word. We get equipped with theology. we understand who God is. Again, but where do we go to war? We go to war in praise and worship.
Yes.
And it's the response of that truth. It's like, I understand, I know it's true. Or maybe you don't understand yet, but there's a moment of taking ground. It's like, okay, I'm receiving these truths. I understand how this applies to my life. I know who I am in Christ. I know that I'm set free. I know that grace has the claim on me. And now I'm going to sing it back. And I'm going to sing it and I'm going to present what I'm facing with the cross. And in and through that, we know in Scripture you're set free. And it's a process, but as you walk through it, you begin to these burdens begin to be loosed in your life.
Yes.
And you begin to distance yourself from the things that tear you down, and you get closer to God and the things that actually hold you up.
Yes.
And in a way, you're cleaning your lens, you know?
That's right.
People
I'm
wear
really
glasses.
glad you went there, because if you weren't going to go there, I was. And it just, as you've been talking and explaining kind of the heart behind this and how you got there, the whole time I'm thinking, wow, he thought he was writing this song for an Easter service 2020.
Right, yeah.
And now look at where our world is in fear and anxiety and all of these things that we, as Christ followers, say, nope, you got to take that up with the cross.
Yes.
And you've and the team has produced this song that, as I love this anthem word that you're using, as an anthem, as a weapon, as something that they can take in and outwardly respond and say, no, Christ with the victory. Mm-hmm. And then to take that a step further for all those people, because our whole mission here at One and All is to bring those far from God near to God. And one of the most powerful, Jeff talks about it, and you're talking about it in your own way through a worship pastor lens today. When there's something grounded in truth, which is this proclamation through song, when we're worshiping God with music, there's something that somebody who's far from God, when they're watching that happen. And so I'm thinking right now, as we're doing these Easter services in homes, and people are watching this on their TVs, and there is somebody in that room who is far from God, when they are watching somebody in the battle with a song say that anthem, there's something so irresistible about that. And so to create a song that we get to sing in the middle of the coronavirus, or whenever you're listening to this podcast, in the middle of whatever you're in or whatever the world is in, there's something powerful about somebody proclaiming this through song outwardly, which is why we worship. Yeah. It's why we sing out loud. It's why we do everything possible to create an environment where you can engage, not consume, not watch the show, but engage in this spiritual battle through song.
Yeah.
And you brought up the team, and Chris, you've mentioned a handful of times in this conversation, the we, and I want to get to who those people are.
Yeah.
But before we do, we're going to get a little, we're going to get a preview, and we're going to listen to this.
Oh, I like that.
So we're going to throw to the song now so you can listen.
Awesome.
And we'll come back to it and close it out.
I know the one who's with us is stronger than 10,000 fears. The one whose name is holy brings life beyond 10,000 years. Let her sing out, heaven is near. From death to life, our hope is here. Christ with the victory on Calvary's hill, the cross before me, my hope revealed. You paid my ransom, I've been set free. The cross before me, I am redeemed. healing fill me. Fix my eyes on all you've done. Let her sing out, heaven is near. From death to life, our hope is here. Christ with the victory on Calvary's hill. The cross before me, my hope revealed. You paid my ransom, I've been set free. The cross before me, I am redeemed. Pure and blameless King, the crown of thorns was meant for me. Knowing who I'd be, He took the place of suffering. Pure and blameless King, the crown of thorns was meant for me. Knowing who I'd be, You took the place of suffering. You set this captive free. Grace now owns the claim on me. Christ with the victory on Calvary's hill. The cross before me, my hope revealed. You paid my ransom, I've been set free. The cross before me, I am redeemed. Christ with the victory on Calvary's hill. The cross before me, my hope revealed. You paid my ransom, I've been set free. The cross before me, I am redeemed. The cross before me, I am redeemed. The cross before me, I am redeemed.
Oh, there you go.
So good.
You know what I love just listening to it then. I never listened to the tags at the very end the way I did just now in just like it's almost like a monotonous repeating, reminding of what you're talking about. Of the cross before me, I am redeemed. The cross before me, I am redeemed. The cross before me. But the key word there is before. So before, like yourself aside, like put yourself, put your worry, put your insecurities, put your anxiety, like just like let it go. Because before any of that stuff, it's the cross, and that's it. You're like, there's redemption there, and so it's nice to just, I mean, you could just put that those last 3 lines on loop and just play it in your head all day.
You know what's really powerful is like there's moments, you know what I mean, that we have as bros. When we have bro time, you know, and, you know, we're hanging out and...
Or girl time.
Right, or girl time.
They probably have that too.
I'm not familiar with that, but
I'm sure they have that.
And when we go into those moments, you know, I feel like some of the best times that I can remember, or some of the best conversations that I can remember with people that I was close to and doing life with, are the moments where we have to remind each other of who we are. You know, and like, I feel like we have to do that as friends a lot. If we love the people around us, we have to remind them of what the enemy is working full time to try to get us to forget. And so I think that, unfortunately, I'm 30 years old now. This is where I'm at. I'm dealing with that. It's cool. It's great. But I feel like in my 20s, when I was younger, I never thought of it in that way. I never thought of it as like I had a responsibility to remind the people around me to do anything. I was very selfish in a lot of different ways, but I think just being in ministry and doing life for the amount of time I've been able to do it, the thing that means the most to me is being able to have more of those conversations with my friends. And what I feel like this song does for us is it's kind of that conversation between us and God, and the thing that we're able to chant back to our circumstances. And like you pointing that out right now, what's cool about this moment is like, I never thought about it like that either, but like the end, how many times have we been in a prayer and we just say the same thing over and over because that's like what we need to say in that moment.
That's right.
Sometimes all you can do is go, that's not the truth. God knows the truth. We're doing okay. Hold on. All I need is beans, rice, and Jesus
That's
Christ.
right.
Beans, rice, and Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I love those kinds of things and the way that they work out. But what's cool about this too, to give God the glory in the sense that he will use these things to do whatever he wants with. That's also what I love about music. It's also what I love about his word. The word tells us in Isaiah that his word will never return void.
Yes.
But it always accomplishes that which it sets out to do. There's I hate to put you on blast real quick, Benny, but we talked about this years ago in a meeting that we had, and you brought it up. It was a direct quote from Dave Grohl on the Foo Fighters, and I was like, that is so dope. He said something like, what's cool about music is that you could sing one song to 30,000 people, something like that, and they'll sing it back to you for 30,000 different reasons. And that's how powerful music is.
That's right.
And that's how powerful I think the message and the intentionality of what we're putting out. That's why I respect my friends at different churches all around the world who are doing that and providing really an anthem for our world to sing in the middle of our issues. Our worship is our response to God. Sometimes that means dancing. Sometimes that means singing. Sometimes that means painting. Worship is our response to God in the middle of what we're going through. And so I'm just thankful for my brothers and sisters around the world who are creating that kind of ammunition for the rest of us to praise with.
Yeah, that's good. So the team, One and All Worship, gang, there's so many.
Yeah.
This is one of, I think, many to come down the road of One and All Worship, but it takes a village.
It does.
So,
yeah.
I know a handful of people I'd love to mention, key team members and people that serve on the weekends here that are such a big part of the team that had big hand.
Yes.
In the recording and making of this record.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to stop me because I could talk about this all day. But again, the other reason, the thing I feel like I need to say is how blessed we are as a team to have not just talented people, but people who understand everything we just talked about.
Yes.
And I feel like there's power sometimes if you're on the outside looking in, you think that power comes from talent. And I would say that from the inside, we would tell you, we think power comes from unity.
That's right.
We think power comes from a made up mind together. And there's a lot of things that go into that to kind of nurture that and take care of that. But I just like to think of it as chasing the blessing. It's going to be hard to get to everyone who's been involved, but we have Raul Alfonso, who's our lead music director.
Rowdy,
Rowdy, my
Raul.
boy. He had a hand in writing this song, but I brought it to him. And what I was grateful for is there's a handful of people on this team who I could just go, hey, I have this idea. And then I see them in a month and it's done. Like they're just, they've been working on it or they've been doing different stuff. And that's the kind of guy Rowdy is. He is a minister and his weapon is melodies, you know what I mean? And bass lines, he's the man, dude. Yeah. And
we gotta get Rowdy on here. Anyways.
I got with them and I told him about my idea behind the song, and I was very fortunate to have his heart and his head around a lot of the producing elements of this song and the engineering parts. And I came to him with a very simple idea and explained to him that what I was looking for as far as what the vibe was, And Raul has a great sense of who we are. Musically, he's got a great sense of who we are as a team, and he's leading our team that leads our bands, and so they're all connected and they're all talking and they're all in fellowship, and they know he knows what's important to them, he knows what's important to our current situation, and he just he's so gifted and respected, and so we're blessed to have him. We really are. I'm super thankful, for Benny and how I can come to him with a very simple idea, and Ben can take a simple idea and make it profound. Can I give an illustration as I talk about this for a second? Sorry, I need to talk about this because I think also, and I don't know who would appreciate this, but I would say that I feel like there's maybe more than this, but I kind of try to sum it up very simply by saying this. There are two types of songs in my head. I know this is probably stupid. Sorry. But there's, I compare them to food just because that's where my heart is. But I would say that, there's certain songs that are very in depth and very, very deep, and they're beautiful. They're beautifully arranged. They're in depth musically, and they're like a steak. You go to a steakhouse, you get a steak, you order medium rare, boom, it's just cooked to perfection. It's just it's an experience, okay? But then there's another type of song, and there's another type of food, and that's the chicken bowl. You can't go wrong with a chicken bowl. You know what I'm saying? What's wrong with a chicken bowl? You start in on that thing, it's everything you need sometimes. Sometimes you don't have the money for steak. Sometimes you don't have the time for steak. Sometimes you don't have the right people around for steak. Sometimes you just need to eat a chicken bowl. You know what I'm saying? And it gets the job done. Put some avocado on that. You know what I mean? But for me, I've always felt like that was the kind of songwriter I was. Chicken bowl. It's just quick, fast, good. And but the reason why I bring that up is because Ben and Raul are chefs that allow me to bring crazy ideas in, and weird ingredients, and I let them know what I'm looking for. And because of their expertise and because of the way that God has blessed them and gifted them, also because of the hard work and preparation that has gone into what they do, they whip that thing up, and somehow it's been elevated beyond what I ever thought it could be. And I think that that's the power behind team. I think that's the power behind leaning into the people around you. So Raul really, really understands where I'm coming from. Ben understands where I'm coming from. But the other parts of this is being able to just sit with it with our team for a while. I got to sit with one of our MDs, Emily, and she played it on the piano, and we just sang it. Our worship pastor, Jamie Alfonso, singing through these melodies with me, and Cody and Rachel and the team. And really what we're trying to do the best of is, as we create these things, it feels like our team has been praying about this and thinking about this for a long time. And that's what this feels like.
Yeah. Raul, Rowdy, if you don't know, is lead MD, which stands for music director here at One and All Church on the One and All Worship team. So that's his role here. But produces like a dog.
Yes.
And
Rowdy
puts them beats out.
Yeah.
And as far as people on this record that I wanted to mention, Emily, who also does some music directing here at One and All, as part of One and All Worship. Played the lovely keys. Rowdy did some keys as well. Rowdy, we call Raul Rowdy, by the way. So anytime we say Rowdy, that's who we mean, because he's not rowdy. So somehow
that's why it's funny.
That name.
He's
he's
anti-rowdy,
Mr. Calm,
kind, humble. Awesome dude.
Yeah.
Emily laid some beautiful piano down for this. Juan and Kevin, they
on the
they
electrics.
serve on the weekends. They played a lot of the electric guitars on the recording, as well as Robbie Ragasa, who often runs the live sound here. Front of house audio man, audio chef, as we call them.
Cooking it up.
He also laid some stuff down on the electrics. Rowdy Raul on bass.
Mm-hmm.
That's his go-to.
The one, the only.
He's Mr. 200 Hertz. That's what I call him. Craig Smith.
CTS, dude.
Craig Tyler
Podcast
Smith.
is familiar
On
with
the
him.
kit.
Favorite.
Yeah.
Episode 3 made him a fan favorite real quick.
Yeah, dude.
So he had a bash on the drums.
He also broke Aaron's kick topper.
It's still broken. I'm looking at it
is
right
still
now.
broken,
So, yeah.
headless on the shelf.
If you haven't listened to episode 3, that's worth listening to.
And Jamie, who is Rowdy Raul's lovely wife,
Yes.
Power
Mrs.
couple.
Alfonso.
Mrs. Alfonso,
First lady, as he
First
slowly
lady.
refers
He
to
does
her
say
as.
that.
is singing beautiful vocals as well. Some backup vocals on the recording. But what's cool to see is week in, week out, you'll see everyone get a piece of it.
Yep.
And everyone lead it, and the people get to be a part of it. Currently in their homes,
That's right.
but down the line, all be together.
You know what I think too? I think our team has done a really good job of being intentional about these songs too. Like, I think it's important if sometimes it doesn't work in the song, but like when you write a song that a man or a woman can lead, I think it's super important that we capture that, and it's like two different perspectives. But that's what's cool is Jamie Alfonso, she actually recorded that for our Good Friday services, and so we'll be able to see that and be led by her through it. And so that's exciting.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
So as we close this out, is there a date for this?
Yeah, so what we're looking at is we want to make sure that it comes out at a time where if you're listening to this maybe in the future, we're right in the middle of the quarantine. We're right in the middle, approaching April here. And so our original idea was to release it at Easter. And what we're trying to do is release it at a time when people feel, or when we feel it's going to be most meaningful. And so we're actually thinking, maybe the end of April, and start of May. Maybe that's when we're gonna put it out.
Sweet. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for end of April, beginning of May.
Christ with the victory.
Christ with the victory.
CW
TV, dude.
I see songs in file names because I'm always exporting different mixes and
That's
things
so
like
funny.
that.
What is it on the drive, dude? What is it?
Yeah.
What's the short?
So it's O and symbol A,
Okay.
O&A, worship, underscore. Like, it's basically, if you think how a house is made, you got to start with foundation, right?
Sure,
So
yeah,
one
yeah.
and all worship, boom.
See what I mean?
But
Steak. See?
O&A worship underscore song name. I usually like to include full names instead of abbreviations, but if it's like a song like What a Beautiful Name, or like where there's just, it's so long it takes up the entire page just to read it, you can abbreviate and just do the letters. So this one's Christ with the victory. So it's CWTV. So ONA Worship _CWTV _ if it's a mix, whatever version of the mix, so mix 1, 2, 3, or if it's master, whatever that number is. So on the drive, it's ONA Worship _CWTV _ final master .wave.
Yes, dude.
That's what's going to reach people's ears. That file name is what people will be listening to.
Yeah, unless Rowdy renamed it after I sent it to him. I think, yeah, he probably did. But you can find it. Keep your eyes and ears peeled. iTunes, Spotify.
Also, ONE&ALL Worship, Instagram. That's where we're going to be
on that,
making sure people have dates and stuff.
Instagram's one of the best platforms to follow people to find out what's going on. That includes churches and also restaurants.
Yes. Ooh.
Cafes.
Ooh.
Like, are they open with the new coronavirus, like, limitations? Go on their Instagram.
That's a life hack. Life hacks with Ben.
Yeah,
we should just have a side section of this whole show. Life hacks with Ben.
Google
Instagram.
takes a couple of days, go straight to Instagram.
Straight to Insta.
Yeah, because they'll, like, if something's new, that's where you go to, like, post about it. Say, hey, new hours, or delivery only, or whatever. There's usually a post on there you can find. So
that's the best way to connect with this podcast as well.
That was a little bit extra.
ONE&ALL Podcast.
ONE&ALL Podcast on Instagram.
That's right.
Check it out.
Thanks, Chris, for hanging and
Thank you,
sharing
boys.
the heart behind the song.
Appreciate
It's
it.
important to
Thanks,
hear
man.
that. Cheers.
Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the ONE&ALL Podcast. Ben, that was so great to hear from Chris. I love that song even more now, just being able to hear the heart behind it, how it was produced. You have any final thoughts?
I would just encourage you to be informed about these kinds of things within church. If you're unfamiliar with it, if it's maybe something you don't view as important, it's always great to know what goes on, what goes into something, the heart behind it. Specifically today, we're talking about song for our church to sing and to worship to. But be informed about it. I hope that it inspires you, and catch it when it comes out and share it. If it's ministering to you, most likely it has the potential to minister to somebody else as well. So
if you're listening on podcast, we would encourage you to subscribe wherever you're listening to. The great thing about being on Spotify is you're probably also going to catch this song when it releases. So make sure that you subscribe wherever you're listening. You'll not only get great content from us, but also this great content that comes out musically. We would also love for you to join us in song on a weekend. So you can head over to oneandall.church/live, and there's some other helpful links in the description wherever you're listening to this podcast. We would love to connect with you. And until next time,
I'm Ben.
and I'm Aaron. Cheers.